Welcome to WSOU Sports Talk. I'm your host, Ronny Castaneda, joined alongside Christian Gardner and Madi Travisano. Guys, how you guys doing?
I'm doing good. Oh,
See, look at us. We're always on the same plane.
Same page. But I'm doing good. Nothing too exciting, I guess, for me here in California. But yeah. Christian, how are you?
I'm just excited to talk to you guys. This is like one of the big things of my week now.
Awesome. Well, some other big things that have come about this week have been the ongoing protests all across the country after the death of George Floyd in police custody. Now, not only have just regular civilians been going out and marching streets, there have been athletes who have been doing the same. Just yesterday, we had a local SOU news assistant, Ronny Castaneda, get a clip of Grizzlies forward Kyle Anderson marching down Hoboken with protesters. The other day, Jamal Adams was in his hometown of Dallas, Texas with protesters. And so were the Denver Broncos holding something outside of their stadium for protesters. I mean, what we're seeing is really insurmountable. What have you guys seen from this?
Christian, do you want to go first?
Sure. Well, personally, I went out to some protests last week. That's why I'm staying at home. I'm trying to quarantine to stay safe for myself and my family, protect them. But I mean, it just kind of shows where we're at in this country right now, that there's athletes that are trying to return, especially basketball players. They just got the news that they're going to be able to go back and play, but they're still risking their lives to voice their opinions in something that they're so strongly about. And I just saw a post that John Wall was out in DC last night, and they're still making like donations and different things like that, being the public figures that they are. So it just shows that trying to use their platform for better and trying to create change in this country.
Yeah, I'm just going off of that a little bit more. You see athletes who, like you said, who their seasons are returning shortly, but they're still going out. And then the athletes who maybe can't go out and protest are donating, and they're using their platform to just talk about these issues and just say like, hey, here's ways, like, I'm not going to protest, but here are so many other ways that you can like join me, and like signing petitions, donating, things like that. And so I just think it's really great to see all these athletes using their platform for something good, because so like I follow so many athletes, I know you guys do too, and just seeing them like voice issues is something great to see, especially just like for younger generations to just kind of grow up with like these huge figures just putting out all those great messages. So.
Absolutely. And to see so many different athletes, take their attention away from what was an ongoing pandemic into something that is more closer to them and, closer to home for so many of them, especially with the NBA players and the NFL players, where the majority of the players in their league are African American. So this is obviously something that hits, close to their hearts. And it's amazing to see so many people just come together, and how sports can really show up in every aspect of life, even if we're in a pandemic and their stadiums are closed. But moving along to the NBA, they won't be closed for that long, because they had just announced that the season will be looking to start July 31st. So for everyone who's been waiting for some basketball to be played, you don't have to wait that much longer. They announced the 22 teams that will be coming to Disney World, the 22 teams that will be going to the wide world of sports to continue their season. Before we get into the real logistics of how that's going to go down, it's been 9 teams from the Eastern Conference and 13 teams from the Western Conference. So obviously there's some big changes there. But reading off from top to bottom, taking the trip to Disneyland will be the Milwaukee Bucks, Toronto Raptors, Boston Celtics, Miami Heat, Indiana Pacers, Philadelphia 76ers, the Brooklyn Nets, Orlando Magic, and the Washington Wizards. For the Western Conference, it will be the Los Angeles Lakers, the LA Clippers, Denver Nuggets, Utah Jazz, Oklahoma City Thunder, the Houston Rockets, the Dallas Mavericks, Memphis Grizzlies, Portland Trailblazers, New Orleans Pelicans, the Sacramento Kings, San Antonio Spurs, and the Phoenix Suns. Any names there that stick out to you guys for either conference?
Well, for myself personally, I've always grown up being a Wizards fan, so just being included, I'm happy. That's a success for me. But I have to say, I feel like a lot of the reasons why the Wizards are actually there is because of Zion Williamson. I mean, we saw the story coming out of the report that the NBA wanted Zion Williamson to be part
Oh,
of this.
Christian, you said the Wizards and not the Pelicans.
No, I know.
Oh, what?
Yeah, I know. So it wouldn't be fair if they would only give these Western Conference teams a chance to get into
Oh,
the
I
playoffs,
see.
and you can't let any Eastern Conference
I
teams. So
see.
that's the only reason why the Wizards are there.
Okay.
So they could have easily just started with the playoffs with just the 16 teams,
Mhm.
but no, we're gonna give them the chance because we want to see Zion Williamson, we
I
want to
see.
see John Morant, and we want to see Bradley Beal. That's what we want. So I have to give props to having the Pelicans still being there. Kind of saved my Wizards a little bit.
Mhm. Maddie, anything you have to add?
I'm happy the Lakers are in it. I'm a big Lakers fan. Lakers haven't been amazing the last few years, so I'll give them a watch. I don't know. But I think I'm gonna be interested to see like how the teams shake out, like because maybe I'm interested to see like what players show up. Like maybe some players decide not to rejoin. Like what if they're like, I don't want to go and play because of like my family, or like I feel like there's teams are gonna look a lot different, which I think is gonna be really interesting to see how that shakes out. But that's pretty much it.
Well, there is a case where there is a team that is very much, in denial about going back. That's going to be the Portland Trailblazers. Now the ruling was passed earlier this week, and the Portland Trailblazers, I believe that very same day, said that they weren't exactly 100% willing to go back to playing basketball amidst everything that's going on. And for the Portland Trailblazers, they're almost in a Wizards situation too, where they're pretty lucky to get there. They were, dead in the water in the Western Conference, one of the most disappointing teams all season. And really, it's been the play of Damian Lillard that's kept them relevant. And, what's your guys' take on that situation? If you were either the GM or a player on the Trailblazers, are you taking that risk to go play basketball, or are you going to sit back and think, I don't have a shot anyway, might as well, rebuild and get ready for the, 2021 season?
Well, it seems like they're trying to do their best to make everything healthy and keep everyone safe. They said no one's allowed to go into actual Disney World and ride rides and like that, and they're trying to limit those contacts. But it is a fair question. I mean, we saw Dame come out with a statement that if he didn't have a chance to make the playoffs, he wouldn't play. And so there's a possibility within those 8 games, he's not going to play all those games. So who knows? I think myself personally, if I had the chance to be playing NBA basketball, I would still try to play because that's my calling within life. But of course, family comes first. So I wouldn't judge them if they didn't want to play.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, how do you, like, obviously you love basketball, but you also love your family. So I think it's hard to kind of pick. I think as an organization, I think it's interesting to see like they want to either all play or not play. I think that's not a lot of what other teams are doing. But at the same time, like how do you, as the GM, try and voice an opinion? Like obviously that's what the GM's supposed to do, but how do you voice your opinion for your entire team? Like that's not what everyone necessarily wants to do. But I mean, it is a good point. If we're not going to make the playoffs, why even go risk our safety for it? But then it's like, then will other teams start to back out? And then that will kind of, I think then we'll not even see NBA return if that starts happening. So.
Now we can't go much further into this conversation without describing, the logistics of it. So basically, each team will have played they will play 8 playing games as a sense, added on to their regular season total. That's going to help them with the seeding. So basically, I guess the goal is for that most teams will end somewhere between having played total 71 and 75 games, granted the separation between the cut of the season. And then the seeding will be very interesting. And I kind of like it. The top 7 teams from each conference will be guaranteed a playoff spot, but that leaves usual tiebreakers or playing games for the 8th seeds. Now, for the playoff games in the East, you have the newly added Washington Wizards, and then you'll have the Orlando Magic and the Brooklyn Nets, who are at 8 and 7 respectively. And now they'll be playing down for the wire. So basically, all the hard work that had been going down, you don't really know what could happen. For all we know, the Brooklyn Nets, who we'll talk about later, Katie and Kyrie have already stated that they will not be returning to the season. But it's going to be an interesting tiebreaker. Guys, what do you guys think about that?
I think the Orlando Magic just got the short end of the stick on that one. Because before the hiatus happened, they had a pretty easy strength of schedule, and the Wizards were going to take on some of the top teams in the league and could not chase them. And the Wizards are 5.5 games back behind the Magic, and the Magic had already swept the Wizards. But now the Wizards only have to win coming close to like 3 games, and it's a possibility that Orlando could get knocked out of the playoffs. So they definitely got the short end of the stick on that one.
I guess we'll just dive right into the narrative surrounding the Brooklyn Nets. The Brooklyn Nets were riding high off some emotion coming from last year's offseason, in that Kyrie and KD were Brooklyn Nets. And so far, KD wasn't going to play that his first season. He's still recuperating from an Achilles injury. But Kyrie Irving came down and was honestly the voice of the Brooklyn Nets for the games where he wasn't injured and that he was actually on the court playing. But now him and KD officially said that they will not be playing. They will be traveling down to the arena. They will be injured reserve players. They'll just be there, basically on the bench and cheering on their teammates, but they will not play. As a guy who reps the Nets as long as I have, it's very odd to see that, but I can get where they're coming from. Maybe they want to handle down their star power and get ready for the next season when they finally get the team healthy and together to do that. But nonetheless, that's going to leave Karis LeVert and Spencer Dinwiddie to really carry the load that, handles off from last season, just as they did, and carry this team into what could be a playoff position. So first, let's talk about Katie and Kyrie. Do you guys agree with them not wanting to play, even though they were given a couple more months to recuperate from their respective injuries, and the fact that this is a really shortened season and honestly, no one really knows what could happen? Or do you think they're doing the right thing and waiting out and wanting to play together next season?
I think that you have to respect their decision for not wanting to go back and play, stay, all of their reasons. And I think it's probably the 1 year where you could be like, oh yeah, they don't want to come back and play. Totally understand. But I think it's also interesting that they're still going to go down and travel with the team down there. I just think that's kind of okay, if your reason is to stay safe, then why are you still traveling and being a part of that? If that is their whole reason, that's fine. But then why are you doing that? So why then aren't you playing? Why aren't you taking that next? You're doing everything except for playing. So what? Do you know what I mean? It's kind of just an interesting back and forth. I understand KD is still getting off the injury, and even though he's probably had a few months to recuperate, it's still probably the injury's still not fresh, but he's still probably recuperating even more because he hasn't been playing on it. He hasn't been able to probably train as much or all of that. So I get that. So I don't know. I think it's just a little interesting if that is their reason.
I understand where they're coming from. I agree with it because, Kevin Durant, he has that full injury because he came back too soon. That's the whole reason why he hasn't played this season, is because he came back too soon in this past season when he was still with the Warriors. And for the Nets, it's still an uphill battle anyway, trying to vie for a championship, being that 7th seed, and they would take on the number 2 Raptors at this point in time. So I understand trying to stay safe and staying healthy and be at your best level of playing basketball next season.
So let's go into the West, where it's a more interesting narrative. While the East only added 1 extra team to the usual 8 that would make the playoffs, the West added 5. And so far, the top 8 were the Lakers, Clippers, Nuggets, Jazz, Thunder, Rockets, Mavericks, and Grizzlies. So those are the top 8 teams that if the season were to end, they'd be automatically into the playoffs. And the 5 teams that are still biting for, competing for that 8th spot will be the Trailblazers, the Pelicans, the Kings, San Antonio Spurs, and the Suns. Now, a couple teams there, because for the West, there's a big drop off when it comes to the playoff teams. You have your studs like the Lakers, the Clippers, the Nuggets, and even the Jazz, who really surprised a lot of teams this year. And then there's a big cutoff where you don't really see a lot of winnings, a lot of hit or miss teams later on. But nonetheless, are there any of those 5 teams that I mentioned, out of the Blazers, Pelicans, Kings, Spurs, or Suns, that you really think have a spot of competing against the Grizzlies and might actually do a good job of taking them out?
I think you have to bring up the Pelicans anytime, because we haven't seen enough from Zion Williamson. I mean, we only got, I believe, what was it, 30 games from Zion before the cutoff. So I mean, and they were rolling. They were a completely different team when Zion Williamson was on the floor. So I mean, for them to have a chance to still make the playoffs, I think the NBA had to go that route.
Yeah, I agree. Even with I don't watch a ton of NBA, professional basketball, sorry. But I think Zion Williamson is the one person that everyone can't get enough of. And I think, like Christian said, the Pelicans, they were on a great run. And I think that's just going to continue once they start playing again.
Looking at the other teams, it's going to be the Blazers, Kings, Spurs, and Suns. Now, there's a big narrative for each one of those teams. For the Blazers, one of the most disappointing teams in all of the NBA right now, coming off a season where they went to the Western Conference Finals, lost to the Warriors, of course, but nonetheless they made it, and then they came back, looking for revenge, and then they were almost dead last in the West for a couple years, or for a couple games. Then, as you guys mentioned, the Pelicans, Zion Williamson. First off, the Pelicans were making a name for themselves, and Brandon Ingram was making a name for himself before Zion Williamson got into the picture. They get into the picture, and like you said, Christian, they start rolling. They start winning and winning, and not to mention they have all the hype surrounding them too. The Kings, they're a more surprise team that we could say. They do have a young core surrounded around De'Aaron Fox and Harrison Barnes, but not really anything too surprising. But they do have, the kind of finesse to be able to get around any team in the league. The Spurs, they're riding high on Coach Pop's legacy, hoping to make sure that they can get his playoff run to 23 years, which is pretty remarkable nonetheless, and looking to see what DeMar DeRozan can do in San Antonio. But my pick is going to have to be the Phoenix Suns. The Phoenix Suns, there's a lot of stuff going around with the Phoenix Suns. First off, DeAndre Ayton is highly underrated as a big man. He does so much work for him in that scenario. And then looking at everyone else they have, Kelly Oubre, who's really just blown up on the spot and doing everything he can. Ricky Rubio, who can do a lot for them too. And then let's go to the man, Devin Booker, who a lot of people are criticizing him because they're all saying that, he doesn't have the power to bring his team over to the playoffs, or he doesn't have the kind of energy to bring his teammates up. Now he has a chance to cancel that narrative and put his team in the position that he's been wanting to do for the past 4 years. Because let's face it, being a Phoenix Sun for the past couple years isn't really a enjoyable task. So if we're talking about that, it's going to have to be the Phoenix Suns and, what they can do. All the other teams are great, and nonetheless, it's going to be tremendous basketball to see, who's going to fight for that 8th seed. But nonetheless, it's still going to be a wide open battle, and it'll be fun to see. Something else that will be fun to see is recently added were that NBA execs, or the people who are organizing the return, were thinking of adding NBA 2K sound effects to act as crowd noises during the games. Now, listen, I haven't played 2K in a while, so I kind of forget, what the sound effects sound like. They did sound real, it is a video game. That's what they're supposed to do. I'm pretty sure the audio is actually taken from real NBA games. But nonetheless, that's a really innovative way to get about that. What do you guys think about that?
I don't know. I guess I would have more questions about it. Are the sounds playing so the players can hear them, or is it just for the people watching at home? What do you know what I mean? I think there's still a lot of things to know about it. And like you said, yeah, sure, they actually come from real NBA games, but these yes, they're going to be real NBA games, but they're not actually going to be more real. I think there's so many other things to do with it. I feel like adding the 2K sounds might be going that step, might be taking that step that doesn't need to be taken.
I think it's just kind of strange.
Yeah.
Just to see empty stands and then hear people screaming and stuff seems kind of weird. But I have an alternative, and I thought of this a couple weeks ago. Okay. How to be socially distant and still have fans in the arena. You have one fan per each section. So there's just one fan screaming by themselves. Just screaming at the players. It's just like, come on, LeBron, do better. You got to hustle out there. I think it would be so funny. And I would just love to see that. I would just love to see just one crazy fan, just one super fan from every team that's in just one part of the section, just in the lower bowl by themselves.
Could it be like one family, you know, like one like household, like that, just like family that's like a huge fans, like they all are like that one section, just to like make it not one person. I feel like that, like just add a little bit more people.
I was thinking of doing that too, you know, like, you know, make it a sweepstakes. You and 4 friends can be, you know, the group to cheer on whatever team in your own section or whatever. That'd be pretty cool. I like that idea though, Christian. That's very innovative.
That's a good idea. So you still have like fans there, but like only like the biggest fans, and like that would be crazy. Like I think that'd be super interesting to see actually.
We gotta call Adam Silver. We gotta do that right now.
Yeah, just get him on the phone really quickly, call up Seton Hall, and then Adam Silver be like, hey, so I have an idea. You're welcome. You don't really need to pay me that much. Just pay for the rest of my college and we'll be okay.
We'll be okay. Just have me be the Wizards fan. I'll leave after the 8 games. It's fine. It's fine.
All right. Well, getting into some more logistics, obviously after this is all done, reports are saying that the season might end somewhere in October. That's their schedule, and that's when their plan is to end. But we still have to talk about everything that is going on afterwards. So if I'll read off the list because there are too many dates for me to remember. The NBA draft lottery will take place on August 25th. And that's assuming that the games begin on July 31st, because remember, everything is still tentative. If something does pop up where they'll have to push it back, everything will act accordingly. But the lottery teams, how will they be determined? The usual 14 teams that are usually picked will now become 8, and those 8 teams will be the ones who weren't asked to come into Orlando. So honestly, the only teams we really have to talk about would be the Golden State Warriors and the New York Knicks, who are still fighting for that number 1 spot. And that's going to be interesting to look at because, wow, I lost my train of thought. Okay. All right. And, you know, that's going to be interesting to look at. How is that going to happen during the NBA season? And, you know, we're not used to seeing – well, we are used to seeing the draft lottery happen during the playoffs, but having the draft and everything like that happen during, it's still very, very odd. It's just so weird. And the fact that it's all going to be condensed too in such a quick amount of time is also very weird. But nonetheless, also the NBA draft will be taking place October 15th. So for the Seton Hall, you know, fan base, we might see Miles Powell go a little later than expected, not in June, but back later on in October. And the big question, or at least the big question that has been coming to me, you know, if the draft is going to happen at the usual time when the NBA season would be starting, then when is the 2021 season going to start? And reports are saying that it will start on December 1st, once again, assuming that the continuation of the season begins on July 31st. And there have been some reports that this start on December 1st will be a permanent move. It will be a permanent thing. So if you guys see this, what are your thoughts on that? You know, because this really could be history. Instead of having the season start, you know, around Halloween and end, you know, in the beginning or midway through June, depending on how long the playoffs and the NBA finals go, we can have a season that starts, you know, early in the winter months and it's going to end, you know, late in the summer. What do you guys think of that?
Well, I think the first thing that comes to mind is that people already kind of did that for the NBA. Like, people don't really tune into the NBA until after the NFL is over. So when Christmas comes around, that's when people start tuning into the NBA in the first place. So I think having the NBA prioritize that, it might help the league as a whole. But what I thought when this came down was, if NBA is being played in the summer, what does that do for the MLB? Because personally, I would value the NBA over the MLB, and I have during the springtime, and I would continue to do that during the summer. I know I'm so sorry, Maddie. I'm so sorry, but I would continue to watch NBA basketball over MLB during the summer. So I wonder how that would hurt the MLB.
I totally agree. Okay, I don't agree with you like picking the NBA over the MLB. Like whatever, we'll agree to disagree on that one. But I do agree that I think baseball is declining in the fact, and a lot of people do like the NBA more. So I think like you, Christian, a lot of people will probably prioritize, sitting in a nice, cold, air-conditioned stadium when it's hot outside, especially like people in California would probably rather go sit in the Staples Center than go out and sit at Dodger Stadium in the blazing sun. I think that's just what people will probably have to like choose between. But I also agree with what you said. People don't start watching the NBA until after the NFL's over. So I think it's a smarter move for them to just save money, and their revenue will still be up. People will be watching it regardless. And I think it's a move they've been talking about for so long that I think at this point they should just do it, because it's right circumstances, like is like a bad way to phrase it, but it's the right circumstances for them to finally just make that move permanent.
And that's basically the plan for the NBA. So we will be seeing basketball played soon, as long as all the requirements are met. And they will still be monitoring the coronavirus, making sure numbers are going down, because they have said time and time again, and this is, a very noble act from the NBA, in saying that their safety for their players and everyone around the organizations is a top priority. And it's good to know that they won't start the NBA season unless they are met with those safety requirements. So props to the NBA. They really are, the trailblazing movement, pun not intended. I don't know how I got that, but they really are a trailblazing movement within that. All right, and moving on into college basketball, big news coming out this week that Oklahoma State, after a number of allegations regarding transfers and the recruitment process, they have now been giving a 1-year ban for the NCAA tournament. Now, Oklahoma State hasn't exactly been, the most basketball popular school. It's not a team we're really looking to see, come tournament. But this year is different because they had the number 1 recruit in the nation in Cade Cunningham. I mean, that's just a heartbreaker, not only for him, but for just teams and, viewership as a whole. Now they won't be able to see. For him, he won't be able to play as long as he wants to. For the fans, they won't be able to see the number 1 player or one of, oh my God, they won't be able to see the number 1 recruit play in the postseason, where you really get to see, how those guys step up. And for teams, in the NBA, they won't be able to see how he'll, act or play in the NCAA tournament, and whether or not that'll raise or lower his draft stock. So that's huge news coming from Oklahoma State. What were your guys' takes on it?
Well, first, for me, I mean, I had to go back. I think Oklahoma State hasn't been in basketball prominence for some time. Like, the last great player to come out of Oklahoma State was Marcus Smart in 2014. So for them, this is hurting the most. But you have to wonder, will Cade Cunningham go in a different route? Like, is he allowed to leave Oklahoma State and maybe even go towards the G League that we've seen some players do so far in this coronavirus pandemic era?
Yeah, I agree. I think that he obviously picked there to bring back that prominence to Oklahoma State, and the fact that he now doesn't get to play in the tournament, like you said, lowers his draft stock. It'll hurt future recruiting for Oklahoma State. This whole all the allegations have already done that, so the fact that they're also banned is really going to hurt them more in the long run. And you kind of just feel bad for Cunningham, the fact that he can't play, like the tournament, like I said, it's the one time like you showcase what you have against every other team that is at your level or higher and see what you can do, what you can play. And so maybe G League, who knows? I think we'll just have to wait and see. I mean, during this time, all these players are trying to figure it out as well. And so I think it's going to be surprising to see what next year's going to, what this upcoming college basketball season is going to look like, and even next season as well.
That's a really big narrative too. And, we won't really know what's to come from this. And as I mentioned, or as I'm going to talk about later, Kansas and Louisville will also be quote unquote preparing themselves for some more reparations that they've been in talks around some allegations as well. But Maddie and Chris, you both brought up a big point too in what the G League has been doing. The G League is giving something that the NCAA doesn't want to do for athletes, even though it's something that they've been fighting for so long, and that's pay them. And not to mention in the G League, they're getting paid handsomely. I mean, they're getting some contracts that some vets in the NBA wish they could get. So honestly, if you are a top high school recruit and you look at what each and you're looking at what each circumstance has to offer. You can go to college. You can enjoy, the college lifestyle for a bit. Learn from some of the best coaches, in the country and play against some schools and, have that experience. But you can go into the G League. You'll have more NBA attention on you. You'll be able to play alongside NBA talent, whether it's people who have spent time in the league or working to get their way back into the league. Not to mention all of that, and you're getting paid very well. So if you're a top high school recruit, is there anything that's going to make you not want to pick the G League route? And if you're asking me, it's a conversation that should be held more because college basketball could be in really big trouble. You could see top recruits decide to take the G League route instead of college, and then some of the best talent that we're going to see, it's going to be hard to see because it won't be aired, on the big primetime college games because they're going to be too busy balling out in the G League, waiting for the draft, and then taking that route. Guys, what's your take on that whole scenario?
Go ahead, Maddie.
Okay. I mean, yes, I understand, like, go to the G League. You get paid. You have your draft stock, all of that. But if you're at a school such as Seton Hall, Miles Powell changed the best, like, Miles Powell, Angel Delgado, Desi Rodriguez, like, they all, like, did the college, like, not take away Miles for a second. Like, Angel Delgado, Desi, like, they did the college thing and then the G League too. So I think it's something that, again, I think it's hard to pick either or. I think some people still want to go to college because your NBA stock is up and you still have the option to go to the G League because, like, there are some people bringing Miles Powell back in the conversation that wanted to get their college degree. There's some people that, like, they're the first person in their family to graduate college. And, like, for a lot of people, that is a bigger conversation than I think we're giving credit to because, yes, like, they get paid in the G League, but almost all the players, like, they're on scholarship. So they're getting free college education, and then they could also go to the G League and get paid before the NBA. So while I do think maybe more people will start to go to the G League after, like, if you're a top high school recruit, but I don't think all of them, because there are still, like, some schools like Kansas, Kentucky, like, you can't take away those experiences or that, like, people rally around college basketball. And I think people love college basketball so much, like March Madness, like, people live for that. Like, everyone obsesses over that. So I think that is definitely something that won't be taken away. And I mean, not everyone really watches the G League. Like, me, for example, I kind of watch the NBA, don't watch the G League, but I watch a ton of college basketball. And I don't think I'm the only one that does that. So I think that's kind of how a lot of people are. I don't know. But
I think I agree with you, Maddie. Like, people value their education, and that can't be offered within the G League. But I have to say, if I was a top talent recruit, one of the top in the nation, you're going to give me 6 figures straight out of high school. It's hard for me to value my education when I'm making that kind of money. And if I was only going to be at school for 1 year, I mean, how much could you gain from just that one year? For Seton Hall, we have a lot of players that stay for long periods of time and they build within our community and within our culture. But for a kid like Cade Cunningham, he wasn't going to be in Stillwater, Oklahoma for 4 years. That wasn't going to happen. And for a kid like Jalen Green, it just makes sense to get that money, play in the G League, and we'll see how draft stock goes. Because, I mean, March Madness, you get so much exposure from that. But, I mean, if you're tied with an NBA team within the G League, you're going to have the scouts from that team. So you're going to be valued by at least one organization. So it depends on how this plays out. Because down the road, I could see, yes, you get way more exposure while playing college basketball on national TV night after night on most games. For your G League, I don't know how many national games there are in the G League. So it's a fair argument of saying in college basketball, you could get more exposure, but also in the G League, you get a lot of money and you could still get scouted and get the same value from being partnered with an NBA organization, although it's in the G League.
But you can now also make the argument that more NCAA players, because of all the rules are changing, could also be getting paid. Not as much as the G League, but now you're getting college education, draft stock, and money for playing at a D1 school. So I'm just saying, that's it. Like, obviously, money versus education. Everyone's going to most likely pick money. So, like, I mean, I would pick education, but that's just me. But, I mean, adding in all the new crazy NCAA rules that, I mean, were such a big topic of conversation before the pandemic hit, I think that'll definitely be back to, like, a main point of, like, conversation. So I think that's also just something to, like, think about in the back of your mind.
So I'll give my take on this. Maddie, I agree with you completely with the education. Okay, if you're not a one and done type player, or if you don't have a career like, let's say Obi Toppin, who it took him a couple of years to really, excel, and he can really do everything, he wanted to do, then, I don't see why you, wouldn't want to stick around for your 4 years, get a degree in something, so that whenever it is that your basketball career is done, you have something else to rely on. I agree with that completely. But a narrative that I think goes unnoticed is that for a lot of these or for a lot of these top basketball recruits, they come from, broken homes and impoverished, towns and cities. So when you have a kid and you hear all these stories about, I'm doing this for my mom, I'm doing this for my dad, I want to get my dad out of here, I want to get my mom out of here, I want to buy my family a house. When you get a kid who's 18 years old and you're willing to throw him, like you said, 6 figures worth of money for something as passionate as he is in, giving back to his family, it's hard for you to say no. So that's another thing that has to go, because we've seen a lot of stories of NCAA players who are going to have to, go away for 1 year and then make it to the NBA, and then with the paycheck they're getting, then they'll do it. Whereas if you're a top high school recruit, you don't have to wait. Right after high school, boom, G League, all that money, give it to your family, and maybe, live with whatever facilities that respective G League team gives you, and then go into the NBA and boom, all your money's right there. So it is a money thing. Whatever anyone says, it's a money thing. And granted, like you said, Maddie, too, there are a lot of rules changing. Now NCAA players are going to be able to make money off endorsements. So whether it's going to be Nike or Adidas or whatever company that maybe represents their school, they can make money off of that. And obviously, we don't know what kind of money they can be making. Obviously, it won't be LeBron James money going into the NBA, but it's still enough, and it's still, very formidable. So right now, it's pretty uncertain to see what direction this is going to take. But going into the future, it's going to be a huge narrative, because this could ultimately change the recruiting process and what college basketball will become. Now, we talked about a lot of sports that are preparing for the rest of their season, but one sport that really hasn't been making any moves is going to be the MLB. Granted, they did take a big leap in the proposal by the MLB Players Association of a 114-game season, which is, it's not exactly the answer, but it's still a big step in the process. Now, obviously, once that plan came out, it was almost, 100% guaranteed that the execs were going to downvote on it, which they did. So it's back to the drawing board on that. They are aiming for an 80-game season, which would be very fun, but a lot to talk about here. Maddie, I'm going to go to you first. I want to know, what did you think about the original 114-game season, and how did you feel when you found out that, it was going to be downvoted? Were you expecting it? Did you think, that would have been the answer? Do you think that would have been the best choice for not only the players, but for the execs and for the respective teams?
First, I will say I think the MLB is handling this the worst out of any professional sports organizations, like by far. Like, I cannot handle it. I also think that the MLB, I've said this time and time and time again, you have millionaires arguing with billionaires about money and reopening and games and rules and all of that. And I think it is so annoying, the fact that you have all these execs and the Players Association. Like, I get it, you need both of them to sign off, but I think there's so many other things that they're missing, and they're just arguing about, like, how many games, all these things. Well, what about the safety of reopening the stadiums, of the safety of the essential staff, the safety of the players, safety of their families? I can go on and on. But I think the original proposal, I think one of the biggest things that was wrong with it is they automatically, like, they just scrapped the entire thing. They didn't, like, be like, okay, here are all of these lists of things. Let's go, like, one by one and try and figure out what we can make. We're like, okay, nope, bye. Let's do a whole new one. And did this, like, every single time. And that's not helpful. They needed to just, like, sit down and figure out. Granted, MLB hasn't, like, obviously their season never started. So I think that gives them a different perspective. All these other teams are like, how do we return? And they are more on it than anyone else. Like, the NHL came out of nowhere. Like, who would have thought they would have had all of their ish together? I don't know. But I think the MLB, I think at this point now, if you cancel the season, it's going to be really hard to start again. But a majority of fans won't be going to the stadium this season. Like, that is just a fact. So I think you have to, like, 114 games is a lot, but I think that's not going to happen. I mean, I think we'll be lucky to see baseball this year, but I am not even counting on watching any baseball. I know that was a long baseball rant, but it's just annoying.
I'm just mad we don't get to see our Hate the Astros World Tour.
I
was ready for that.
Oh my gosh, are you kidding me?
Exactly.
Are you kidding me? I am, obviously, I think you guys know I'm a huge Dodgers fan, and the fact that, like, I can't, like, I was so annoyed. Like, because, everyone's just going to forget about it. Everyone's going to forget about what the Astros did and act like it never happened. And it's so annoying. It's like, are you kidding me? Like, anyway. But, like, again, Christian, that tour was going to be phenomenal.
Oh, so good.
Phenomenal. Like, I didn't look at it, but if, like, they were playing the Mets and the Yankees, I would have gone to both and just worn straight Dodgers gear. I don't even care. I would have, like, paid money to sit in, like, the front row to just scream at them and be like, this, I don't know. Anyway.
Because they did y'all the most dirty. They did y'all.
And you know what's crazy? That tour is like cross country. You're starting off in LA, you're ending up in New York. You got to travel through the whole country with teams just berating your name and everything you did last season. And for all we know, so many seasons before that. So that's just crazy. I completely forgot. Maddie, you're right. People are forgetting about what the Astros did.
I even forgot about it until Christian just brought it up. I forgot about it. And I remember where I was sitting when we lost the World. I literally was sitting at home by myself watching the game. And I didn't leave my room for like 3 hours. I was in the front room in like our TV room. I went to my room, didn't leave for 3 hours. I was devastated. And I mean, like, Dodgers fans are forgetting, like, we're forgetting about it. Like, everyone is. And I think Christian's not even a huge baseball fan, and he remembers. It's like, what? Like, they're literally going to get away with this. And because of the pandemic, they didn't really get any repercussions. Everyone was talking about it, but nothing ever really happened. Like, truly. Like, what, they apologized, and it was like, okay, cool. No. So now we don't get to see that either. And so it's a mess.
I think everything surrounding the MLB right now is a mess. But nonetheless, there's so much going around with that. And it looks like that the next possible date that they can hopefully start start baseball again is going to be, ironically, the 4th of July. So America's pastime might start on Independence Day. While there was a lot brought up in that last conversation, and while the MLB is handling the whole situation poorly in terms of getting everything back on track, it does look like that whenever it is that a plan is set, they were just ready to go. They were willing to do whatever it is to get their players to go. But the thing is, they have to have a plan in place. So like I said, the rejection of a 114-game season is out the window. But an 80-game season can still be salvaged. I mean, it's not looking very much like it right now, but it can still be salvaged. And the bigger narrative that people aren't even talking about anymore, because it can really hurt the MLB. Here's the thing. If the MLB just doesn't think of a plan and baseball isn't played this year, that could be it for what we know of the MLB. First off, you have the NFL, which is the number one, sports entertainment franchise in America. Number one, and it's going to be hard to top that. The NBA has been coasting up in popularity, so much so that they have been challenging the NFL in some ways. So you basically have 1 and 2. And then you have the MLB. The MLB has been losing a lot of popularity because, no offense, you have a game where, touchdowns and hitting your opponents as hard as you can, and, the glorifying players such as Odell Beckham and Saquon Barkley, those electrifying players to boost your popularity. Same thing for the NBA. So much entertainment, and you have guys like LeBron James and Luka Doncic who are universally known and bring popularity not just in America, but around the world. Whereas the MLB, I mean, I saw a crazy thing that was like, Mike Trout is one of the richest baseball players, in the world. He might be one of the richest all time. He might be even the greatest of all time. But if you put him in a room, 9 out of 10 people won't know it's him because they don't know what he looks like, which is insane. So it's crazy to think that amongst everything that's going on, and the MLB knowing that their popularity is going down, they're not in a rush to bring it back. We already talked about the NBA season being changed. It might be played over the summer, which is when baseball is in its prime. And when the NFL season starts, baseball is really forgotten about. It really is, because people are just focused on the NFL. What do you guys think about this? Obviously, we've already discussed that the MLB isn't handling the situation well, but it's a bigger narrative because popularity is going down, and there won't be people, watching the MLB, especially with the way schedules are looking like they're going to be changing.
Christian, do you want to go first?
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah, I think it's just rough how the MLB can recover from this. I really don't know. I think a lot of people they already lost respect for the MLB for what the Astros did, and with little punishment to them. And they've been losing fans years after years, and now there's a possibility of losing an entire season, and then the NBA will have the summer. It's just going to be a struggle for MLB to recover. So I think, like you said, Ronny, they should have been the ones prioritizing and leading the charge in trying to get a season going, because this is their biggest time is spring and summer. They should have been the first league to come back. They should have been the first ones with the plans instead of the NBA leading the charge. So I'll send it over to Maddie because I know you're more passionate about this than I am.
I think I agree. Like their season, like I said before, never started. They had more time than anyone to start thinking of a plan and being like, okay, like scenario A, we don't come. When's the next day? Like then like they had so much more time to figure it out than any other league did, and they haven't been able to. Like at all. They have not been able to come to a conclusion at all. I also think the MLB doesn't have any contact. Like the biggest contact you have obviously is in the clubhouse and the dugout, but they talked about limiting the rosters, and that could have totally been controlled a lot better. And I do agree, like the MLB season probably wasn't going to happen with the pandemic and all of that. But I think some of the rules that they started to talk about with, like I said, limiting rosters, like the staff, all of that, like that they could have figured that out so much more easy. They could have had playoff rosters, which are a lot less. Like they have to determine this. They would have the players give the opportunity to say, okay, I want to come back, yes or no, similar to kind of what the NBA did. So I think that is something that like is really going to hurt them, because like MLB has not had the best track record over the past 2 seasons. And I mean, it is like a very slow game, but so I think it would have been different. I think that if the MLB figured their stuff out first, I think their popularity actually would have gone up, but it didn't. So I think it's going to keep declining. I don't think baseball will like forever be like gone, just because it is like so rooted in like people have grown up playing, like people grow up playing baseball, people like it's like a family thing. So I don't know. I mean, it really makes me sad that like the MLB is declining in popularity, but I'm also not surprised. And especially after this, I'm like not a huge fan of the MLB, just like league in general, you know? So I think, I don't know. It's
You had
sad.
another point saying how they missed out on a chance being the lone sport that was on TV. I mean, there are people that tune into golf that never have before because Peyton Manning and Tom Brady were playing. So baseball missed out on a chance. People were staying up to watch Korean baseball. You're telling me people wouldn't watch Major League Baseball in America if it's the lone sport that's on? So they really just fumbled the bag on it.
Like, I think even if, like, obviously, like, especially for like the Dodgers and like the Angels and then all of the teams out here, like, they probably would not have been able to like play right away, and they would have like a lot of restrictions, and you probably would have to like restructure conferences and all of that, but you still could have played. Like a lot of, like in the middle of their country, like there were a lot of states and baseball teams that could have played each other. Like, you could have seen teams play each other that you would never seen play before. And I think that would have been something people like baseball fans and just sports fans in general would have been like, oh my gosh, I'll stay and watch this, because A, nothing better to watch, but B, I'm just like, I'm happy something else is on, and I don't have to sit here and watch The Office or another show for the 10th time. You know what I mean? Like, I think it would have just been different. So they really messed up, and that's on them. And the popularity declining, it's the people in the front office and the execs and who just couldn't figure it out.
There's going to be a lot to figure out in the coming weeks. You guys touched on a lot of points, and the main one is that really the MLB had the power to be the only sport on TV. Because think about it, everyone's going to tune in for the start of the MLB. You know, if you have a respective team that you cheer for, you're always going to watch opening day. That takes place in the spring months. Then over the summer, that's, like I said, that's the MLB's prime. No other sport is on. And you get that. Although this year, if there weren't no pandemic, there were the Olympics were going to be happening, so maybe that would have altered it. But for 3 out of the 4 years, they basically have their prime in the summer. And then when the NFL comes up and the NBA starts and the fall comes and the MLB dies down, you get your championship series there. So obviously people are going to start watching the World Series too, even if their team isn't in it. A lot of people are just going to tune in because, you know, it's a championship series. You know, there's a lot that happens there. But nonetheless, MLB, it's a general consensus among fans, players, and execs but they're going to have to start to speed up the process and get everything going up quicker. Now, I'm going to have some last licks, nonetheless. I'm going to start with you guys. Is there anything, lastly, that maybe we didn't talk about that you might want to bring up?
Well, I mean, I'll just shout out the Wizards. I'm just happy they're able to be here. I hope they can win a couple games, get to see some extra Rui Hachimura out there, and hey, works for me. You know, I'm glad to have basketball back.
I hope that any type of sports come back soon. I know the PGA Tour is starting soon, so maybe I'll start watching golf more often. Who knows? But I will also say, Ronny, you brought up a great point about the Olympics that were supposed to be this summer. Now they're moved to next summer. So I also have to kind of start wondering, what is that going to make the MLB turn into next year as well? Because these Olympics have been like everyone watches the Olympics. Like, can you not watch the Olympics? So I think that's definitely going to be something we'll be talking about sometime next year and maybe in the next couple months.
Actually, you bring up another good point. With the NBA being in the summer, are they going to take a break for the Olympics to let NBA players play over in Japan? I've never thought about that until you said that just now. How is that going to work?
They could go back to the fashion they had it in the 80s, where it was only college players that would represent the USA in the Olympics. I believe it wasn't until the late 80s or maybe in 92 when they had the Dream Team. And I think that was the first team assembled of just NBA players to go represent the US in the Olympics. So they could go back to the college standard and have that. Maddie, you have something to say? Oh, there.
I think that would be actually really cool. I mean, after watching the Jordan documentary, I think that would actually be kind of cool to see, like maybe like kind of just bring that up. But I mean, I don't know. Like, there are so many people, like they're like, let's start the season now. But I think they are forgetting that in 2021, like all of the decisions they're making now are going to have repercussions that, like, because of the Olympics, that are going to be unseen, because the Olympics are going to take precedent over everything, because that is obviously a worldwide thing. There's so much money invested in that, so many players' times. Like, I don't know, the Olympics are so many things.
We saw in The Last Dance, the growth of Michael Jordan and the NBA came because of that 92 Olympics. So if we don't have LeBron James out there in Japan, how is that going to look for the NBA? Obviously, the NBA has grown internationally so much, but it could hurt if you don't have your top stars out there. I mean, we saw the U.S. team in FIBA only take home the bronze, and how upset people were at that. So if it was just college players, who knows what would happen?
All right, I had to wait for a motorcycle to pass by because he was making a bunch of noise. All right. My last lick is going to be with the NFL. I will go out and say that it was a beautiful thing to see so many players come together in that video. That was, I believe it was put together by Saquon Barkley. It had Michael Thomas, Jamal Adams, Patrick Mahomes, and some rising stars that were speaking on the current protests. That was a beautiful thing to happen. Not to mention a bigger thing that was said by Commissioner Roger Goodell, saying that the NFL should have listened earlier to, those remarks that were being said by players, years ago. And they didn't really say it, but we know who they were talking about. And that was Colin Kaepernick, saying that they should have listened to him a little earlier. But nonetheless, the NFL, it looks like their season won't get hurt at all. And even with everything going on, they're still making a name for themselves. So that's a beautiful thing to say. I'll be cheering for my Jets all the way. Even if they're not going to allow me in MetLife Stadium, I will be sitting on my couch, bleeding green, 24/7. But that'll be it for WSOU Sports Talk. Thank you all so much for listening. Tune in next week as we'll have Michael Daly, Justin Nicosia, and John McCooch, and they'll be talking about everything sports-wise for you guys. But for Christian Gardner and Madi Travisano, I'm Ronny Castaneda. Thank you so much for watching.